What does it feel like to get rich by taking over what others walked away from? I've been obsessed with taking over other people's leftovers since I was a kid. When I was young, I wore the old shoes my brother no longer wanted. I finished the snacks my sister refused to eat. After growing up, I decisively stepped in and took over a college campus beauty no one wanted, Willow. 3 years into our marriage, Makoto showed up at my door on a rainy night. He said, "Willow, you once said that if I asked you to marry me, you would say yes. Does that still count?" Willow stood between the two of us, her eyes reddening. Before she could say a single word, I raised my hand and stopped her. I said, "No need. Being able to marry you is already more than enough for me." Over these 3 years, I learned the Liu family's business operations, built connections within the Liu family's network, and even my parents willingly handed their company over to me. It just so happened that not long ago, I heard that Willow Liu's younger sister had just been dumped by her boyfriend, so I didn't hesitate. I decisively cleaned myself up and stepped forward to catch her at just the right moment. Chapter 1. People always say, raise sons poor and daughters rich. I felt that truth deep in my bones. For example, my older brother was raised free range, while I was basically raised like livestock. And my younger sister, I don't know about other families, but in ours, she was raised like a princess. That said, among all the wealthy families, ours never really ranked that high, especially after my grandfather passed away. From then on, our family declined fast. The house grew quiet, and the doors that once bustled with visitors were left deserted. My brother had good timing. He was born before Grandpa died, so he still got a limited time experience of being a rich kid. By the time I was born, my dad's business had been sabotaged. He collapsed completely and spent his days drinking himself numb outside the house. I grew up watching my mom cry every day, surviving on what she called her bitter milk. When I was 8, the school held a Children's Day event. Every kid could wear a brand new pair of shoes they liked to school. I didn't have any. My brother did. I begged my mom for a whole week, asking her to agree to buy my brother a new pair of shoes as his birthday gift. Sure enough, my brother was thrilled when he got them. Then, without much thought, he tossed me his old pair, the ones that were too small for him. When he threw the shoes at me, his face was full of obvious impatience. He said, "George, our family used to be a prestigious household. Can you stop acting like a beggar, squatting outside my door every day picking up trash?" I pretended not to understand the sarcasm in his words. I looked up at him and grinned. "I won't allow you to say that. My brother's things are not trash." He was left speechless for a moment. After that, my once empty cabinet slowly filled up with toys and picture books. All of them were things my brother no longer wanted. He'd say he was already bored of that racing car, or that something was outdated, yet those toys were clearly just bought, their packaging still unopened. So I kept living off whatever my brother wore, played with, or used. My mom often whispered in my ear that the family conditions were bad, and boys didn't need to be too picky. I nodded obediently, showing I understood. Then my sister was born. Somehow, my dad suddenly turned over a new leaf. He became devoted to the family, carried my sister around every day, grinning like an idiot. He adored her beyond measure. How should I put it? My sister grew up with closets full of beautiful clothes. She attended elite private kindergartens. I once questioned it, but my dad said, "A man must strengthen himself. George, work harder and don't fuss over these things. Suffering a bit does no harm to boys." My nickname is Tardy, meaning the child who arrived too late. Growing up, the sentence I heard most from my mom was, "You have no luck. The family went bankrupt, and then you showed up." But my sister arrived even later than I did. So why was she so lucky? When I raised objections, my mom immediately changed the subject. "If you want to blame someone, blame that useless father of yours. And now you're even blaming me. You heartless brat. I've suffered so much for you kids. My fate is miserable. I'm an outsider by surname, working as a nanny for the Wang family 365 days a year. My sister's nickname is Jenny, meaning a precious gift sent from heaven. So compared to me, my parents liking my sister more was beyond any doubt. My dad, who proudly called himself a daughter-obsessed dad, spoiled her to the extreme. Everything she ate and wore was the best. Even her studies were handled by famous private tutors. She was treated like fragile porcelain, held in the hands for fear of dropping her, cradled in the mouth for fear of melting. My dad personally drove her to and from school every day. As a result, after middle school, my sister had fewer and fewer friends. I felt terrible for her. I'd rather skip evening self-study every day than miss seeing her, riding buses for over 10 stops just to visit her elite school. Maybe because I learned early how to read people and sense their needs. Some classmates gradually became willing to play with my sister, but she still had tutoring classes, so she came to me for help. I hesitated, looking troubled, but could only agree reluctantly. I said, "I really dote on you. I'm helping you because I'm afraid you'll suffer from studying too hard. My sister's eyes filled with tears, her face full of gratitude. I, on the other hand, turned around with her textbooks and went straight to the tutor. I had that top university graduate tutor drill me for an entire semester of senior year math, physics, and chemistry, and just like that, I barely snatched a spot at the very bottom of a key national university. A key university really is something else. The students around you are either insanely rich or possess god-tier brains. I heard from my roommate that the big-chested campus beauty had confessed to Makoto. I immediately went to watch. What I saw was Makoto sneering as he said, "Willow, besides being a little pretty, what else do you have?" He shrugged, lifted his chin, and swept his gaze over us onlookers. "Gentlemen present, whoever likes this type, brand new, free of charge." The crowd was too loud. I only caught the word free. I bolted forward, stood between the two of them, struck the standard hand-raising in-class pose, one hand over my chest, the other raised high, and shouted excitedly, "Me, me, me." Chapter 2. This time, picking up something other people didn't want. I scored big. I picked up a person. She was fine. Free was enough. Nice to look at was enough. Usable was enough. After 3 years of marriage with Willow, she was obedient and sensible. On the rare occasions she wasn't, I'd cup her face and retell that story, how I plucked her out of the crowd in one clean move. Every time, she'd puff up in anger and glare at me. She'd snort coldly and say, "That was clearly because you helped me out of an awkward situation. I thanked you." And that's how we gradually started dating. When she said this, the first rays of morning light slipped through the curtains, casting broken shadows across Willow's face. Willow, although often described as all curves and no brains, had exceptionally good looks. Her face was smooth and luminous like jade, her features delicate and refined, and she had a pair of peach blossom eyes that naturally drew people in. Taking her out still gave me face. I thought life would just keep going like this, until a little over a month ago, when a long-dormant contact in Willow's phone sent her a message. Just like now, she was nestled in my arms, her head buried against my chest, acting spoiled, her voice sticky and intimate in a way that wasn't exactly innocent. But the moment a special notification sounded, even while I was kissing her, she'd lose focus to glance at her phone, then immediately pull away. Her tone returning to neutral, she said, "Honey, I've got something to take care of. I need to head out for a bit. Didn't you say you had a meeting later? Go on then. Don't keep your people waiting." After saying that, she seemed to realize she was acting a little off. Willow stood on her tiptoes and kissed the corner of my mouth. She said, "Aren't we going for Japanese food this afternoon? I need time to get ready too." She blinked and added, "Tonight I'll wear the black stockings you like most." She remembered wrong. I'd asked her yesterday about Japanese food in the afternoon. She never replied, so I didn't bring it up again. And since when did I ever say I liked black stockings? No idea which kind-hearted soul had personally trained her a bit, nor which generous person bought her those stockings, just to have her wear them for me to see. Still, I wrapped my arms around her and said indulgently, "My wife is really wonderful." By a little after 6 in the evening, all my subordinates and colleagues had long since left. I was the only one still waiting for Willow's call. It wasn't that I was the type who could forgive being cheated on. It was just that replacing a woman was too much trouble. Of course, the most important thing was that her parents absolutely adored me now. Her father had promoted me to director at the beginning of the year and handed over the company's core projects for me to manage. Her mother never missed a gathering without showing off her future son-in-law. That wasn't surprising. Willow Lu was the Lu family's only daughter. No wealthy parents would stay calm when they saw a smart, capable son-in-law in that situation. What's more, the Wang family had already fallen from grace. We were entirely dependent on the Lu family for survival. I was useful and easy to control. Cultivating me was essentially an insurance policy for their daughter's future. So I figured that as long as life could go on passably, what I did behind the scenes, seeing a few others, even younger ones, who could really condemn me with a straight face. But Willow's call never came. My phone lit up. It was my mom. Her tone was shocked, overflowing with concern for me. "George, guess who I just ran into while shopping?" she said. It was Willow. And the man next to her, who is he? They were hugging and clinging to each other with a mother's intuition. "I'm telling you, that relationship is definitely not simple," she continued. "I'm telling you, a woman like that, you absolutely must." Seeing her ramble on, I cut her off directly. "What about the thing I mentioned last time? What did my dad decide?" Chapter 3. What I was talking about was handing over the management rights of our own family company to me. No matter how much my father-in-law valued me, it was only incidental. The houses, land, storefronts, shopping centers, trust funds, all of it still had only their daughter's name in the ownership column. To put it bluntly, I was barely any different from a live-in son-in-law, but I never had my eyes on the Lu family's assets in the first place. The pie was too big, my appetite too small. Swallowing it whole would just give me indigestion. All I wanted was to use the Lu family as leverage, to scare the tiger by striking the mountain, and make my useless father understand that it was time for him to step down. My mom clearly hadn't expected me to change topics so abruptly. The line went quiet for a moment. In her mind, a married man who hears that his wife might be cheating on him, yet feels no anger and calmly thinks about business instead, probably wasn't normal. She stammered a bit, then continued. Well, your dad thinks that since you're already a senior executive at Lu Group, getting involved in the Wang family's business too might invite gossip. How about letting your sister liaise with Lu Group instead? I knew they'd come up with something like this, so I put on a troubled tone and said, my father-in-law really values me. This time, he only agreed, reluctantly, to let the Wang family get a slice of the pie because of me. Ask my dad to check which other families are participating in this project. I sighed and added. But Dad does have a point. If I do this, people might think I'm using my position to benefit the Wang family. How about we drop it this time? It's only a 4 or 5-fold increase for the Wang family's assets anyway. I doubt Dad would even be impressed. My mom had this one good trait. She was excellent at picking up on keywords. The moment she heard 4 or 5-fold, she got excited, tossed out a quick, I'll discuss it with your dad again, and hung up. After the call ended, my tightly furrowed brows still didn't relax. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk in no particular rhythm. I liked doing this while thinking. It helped me sort through the cards on the table. My dad was stupid in a very peculiar way. He could trust outsiders with his whole heart, yet remain deeply suspicious of his own family. It seemed that if I wanted to chew through this tough old bone, I'd need to throw on more fuel, and the accelerant, naturally, that would be Willow. I'd take it as her divorce gift to me. It was nearly 11 at night when Willow finally came home. At the time, I was busy in the kitchen. A single lamp was lit on the coffee table in the living room, just bright enough for Willow to see the gift bag containing the handbag I'd bought for her. When she walked in, I eagerly pulled her over. Almost out of instinct, I tucked her cold hands into my arms. Her voice was a little dry when she spoke, her eyes tangled with guilt and remorse. She said, "It's so late, why are you still waiting for me?" I drew her into my arms, feeling the chill in her body. Panic flickered in Willow's eyes, but I pretended not to notice. I rubbed her hands gently and said in a warm voice, "You've always had a cold constitution. Staying out this late and not coming back, you must be frozen. I'm making you some black chicken soup to warm you up. Otherwise you'll definitely catch a cold tomorrow." My tone was indulgent. After speaking, I even pinched her cheek lightly, as if punishing her playfully. By now, Willow's heart should have been in torment. She clenched her fists, clearly weighing her options, but just as she was about to speak, I cut her off. I said, "Next Wednesday is the anniversary of the day we first met. How about we invite both our parents, book a private room, and celebrate properly?" Her mind was already a mess because of that man. There was no way she was really listening to what I was saying, so she naturally agreed to everything. I, on the other hand, quickly got up to take a shower. God knows how hard I'd worked just to come up with a reason to get both families together. I'd even considered celebrating my dog's birthday, but Willow, perhaps trying to cover something up, was drenched in such a strong rose perfume that it nearly knocked me out. Chapter 4. Celebrating the anniversary of the first day we met was honestly ridiculous. My father-in-law and mother-in-law thought I was trying to win Willow back. My parents thought I was using the occasion to build business connections for our family. As for my wife, Willow, she was the funniest of all. She genuinely believed I loved her so deeply that even the first day we met deserved a grand celebration. On the way to the restaurant, Willow was clearly distracted. The phone in her hand kept buzzing nonstop. She noticed that I had glanced at it several times, so she proactively switched it to silent mode. Yet the screen still lit up from time to time. If I didn't say anything, I would start to look abnormal. So I asked, "What's going on? Something up?" Holding the steering wheel, I smiled and teased her. "You've been checking your phone pretty often lately." Then I added, "I saw a post once, when a wife can't put her phone down, that's the beginning of cheating." That line instantly struck a nerve. Willow's body stiffened, and she became visibly tense. Her voice trembled as she hurried to explain. No, husband, it's not that. I didn't, it's just an old friend." I let out a soft scoff and said, "Hey, look at you, why are you so nervous? I was just joking." Then, casually, I continued, "But you have been pretty busy lately. Busy enough that last time I went back to celebrate my dad's birthday, you didn't come with me. My parents even thought we were having relationship problems. I've always been like this, put in 1 unit of effort, but talk about it like 10 units of hardship. After all, kids who make a fuss get candy. But in my family, even when I made a fuss, I never got enough, never got full. So I said, wife, you have to come to this family dinner. You can't do what you did last time, where I prepared a surprise and you left early." But as we got out of the car, I looked at her phone again and sighed. Then, magnanimously, I offered, If it really won't work, then go. You look so distracted, it must be something important, I added. As for me, I'm fine, honestly. It's just celebrating the day we first met. It's not like it's a wedding anniversary. Even without you, it can still be a family dinner, just the younger generation showing concern for the elders' health, I said. Don't worry, wife. I'll smooth things over with the parents. I personally placed the car keys into Willow's palm and watched her drive away in a hurry. I could only hope Makoto wouldn't disappoint me this time. If Willow came back too early, this little one-man show of mine wouldn't be possible at all. Chapter 5. When I walked in alone, both sets of parents showed a moment of confusion. My mom and her mom were the first to react. The smile on my mom's face instantly collapsed. As for my mother-in-law, she asked in disbelief, "Where's Willow? Does she have something going on again?" She knew perfectly well what kind of something her daughter had going on. After me, Willow's mother was the second person to realize her daughter had a problem. After the marriage, I still frequently took Willow back to her parents' place to keep up appearances and maintain family ties. But over the past month, Willow hadn't shown up even once. At first, I was the one encouraging Willow to do things she wanted to do. I told her to go for it, that no matter what happened, I'd clean up after her. Later on, she started coming home very late. By this point, I no longer needed to intervene. If I said too much, I'd look like a useless husband and risk making my father-in-law doubt my competence. If I said too little, my mother-in-law might think I had ulterior motives, that I was marrying into the family to seize her daughter's inheritance. All I needed to do was, when her parents asked, let my expression turn a little unnatural and casually say while drinking water, "Willow has her own things going on." As for whether her parents later asked around or followed her themselves, I would simply pretend I didn't know they already knew. The meal was outwardly harmonious, but beneath the surface, all four of us were riding undercurrents of unspoken thoughts. I served rice, picked up dishes, and occasionally added, "Willow seems to have opened a shop with her close friends recently. Her mental state looks much better. Seeing her have her own career, I'm genuinely happy for her. She deserves a broader life." After my in-laws left, my mom couldn't wait to question me. I finally dropped the smile I'd been wearing for so long. My face instantly filled with exhaustion. I sighed and said, "All I know is that it seems to be her first love from college. But for now, they're both still holding back. Nothing has crossed the line." My dad slammed the table in anger and shouted, "Your wife is about to be stolen away, and you're just sitting here sighing. What's the use of that? Tell me, are you spineless or what? You've done so much for the Liu family, and her parents, two misers. They only gave you management authority, didn't let you touch a single cent of real money. They're so guarded, yet they don't stop to think, besides you, who else could possibly handle an empire as big as the Liu family's?" The pressure in the room dropped to freezing point. The silence was suffocating. Thinking of my past with Willow, I immediately put on a pained expression, then covered my face awkwardly. I heard my dad ask, "Do her parents know about this?" Whether they knew or not, I nodded, because that was the question I'd been waiting for. I said, "That's exactly why I've been calling to push you so many times." Willow is still hesitating, and her parents feel extremely guilty toward me. If Willow doesn't kick up a fuss about divorce, that's one thing, but if she really starts acting up, after the divorce, can our two families' businesses still work together? After I finished speaking, my dad stared at me for a long time. This might have been the first time since I was born that my father truly saw me. He wavered. Perhaps after seeing too much of my brother's rebellion and my sister's spoiled willfulness, he was finally discovering my value for the first time. His gaze gradually softened, pride rising in his eyes, not just pride in me, but in himself as well. Like a real father, he patted my shoulder and said in comfort, "Come to the company tomorrow and sign the responsibility transfer agreement." I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. As the saying goes, if a son does not resemble his father, the father despises him. If a son does resemble his father, the father grows suspicious. So from childhood to adulthood, I have always prided myself on knowing exactly when to act and when to hold back. But this time, I truly couldn't help laughing. This idiot, what kind of business in the world could possibly multiply one's net worth 4 or 5 times overnight? My father really does fall once, then again, and then once more. Chapter 6. In the past, whenever Willow and I had conflicts, my dad would always scold me, tell me to apologize and soften my tone, saying that family wasn't a place to argue about right and wrong. Now he doesn't say that anymore. Instead, he smugly revealed things to me in his role as the head of the family. This time, don't be too humble. Make your stance clear. Let them panic a bit. Negotiating business later will be much easier. My mom, meanwhile, urged me to hurry up and get Willow pregnant. I scoffed at all of it. The only moment that really stuck with me was late at night, when I went downstairs for water and ran into my older brother, who had just returned from volunteering in Antarctica. He was still the same as when we were kids, mocking me with casual contempt. "So," he said, "finally got what you wanted." I'd forgotten how long it had been since I'd spoken so honestly with anyone. Under the moonlit night, washed clean and pale, we stood on the balcony, drinking beer and letting the wind blow past us. We talked about our current lives, our futures, and our childhood. He laughed loudly and said, George, I'm 4 years older than you, but back then you still played me like a fiddle. Where did you even get the money to travel abroad as a kid? You secretly sold my medals, didn't you? And later, I was wondering why you were still working part-time in senior year. Turns out you were secretly taking private tutoring behind mom and dad's backs. I just smiled and said nothing. In truth, my brother was both right and wrong. When I was little, I didn't actually pick up that many of my brother's discarded things. Only two. One was his shoes. The other was the gold medal he threw into the trash, the first-place medal from a piano competition. The shinier and more dazzling that medal was, the more it reminded him of the period when his life had fallen into the mud. But in my eyes, it was nothing more than a resource that could be exchanged. That competition had been funded by my grandfather back then. Even the medal itself was custom designed by a professional designer. The gold on it was real gold. I remember taking the medal to school, showing off for a brief moment, then heading straight to a gold shop to have the gold melted down. I deliberately kept some gold powder and had it made into 10 gold-plated rings. Then I went around school telling stories. At the time, The Lord of the Rings was wildly popular. Classmates talked about it non-stop. In full edgy kid mode, I said, "My dad brought these back from Europe while inspecting projects. Who knows, maybe one of them is the One Ring." Of course, no one believed me, but that didn't stop kids from being tempted by the idea that all it took was 1 month of classroom cleaning duty to own a magic ring of their own. That entire semester, I didn't clean the classroom once. Every day after school, they cleaned for me. I stood in the hallway reciting classical poems. That year, the city was hosting a children's classical poetry competition. Second prize was a 3-day trip to New Zealand. After winning, I used the money I'd saved to buy myself a camera and some necessities. On the day I was about to leave the country, my brother clung to my mom, making a scene and insisting he wanted to go too. To calm him down, I had no choice but to lie, telling him the One Ring was hidden under my bed, turning him into Gollum for a while. As for my sister's tutoring classes, that took even more effort. Back then, no one wanted to play with her, so I helped her classmates with their homework for free, begging them to play with her. Later, the homework help business expanded, and I started charging $200 per subject per day. I outsourced the work to college students, had them imitate each client's handwriting, and adjust the difficulty so the grades showed steady improvement. When parents saw their kids' grades rising, the happier they got, and the more pocket money they gave their kids, which meant the more I earned. Eventually, my sister grew dissatisfied with my mom's suffocating control, so she came to me and said the words I'd been waiting to hear all along. "Brother, how about you go to the tutoring classes for me instead?" Chapter 7. Truth be told, by then I'd already made a lot of money. I was fully capable of hiring a private tutor for myself, but I still wanted to take my sister's, for no other reason than that I couldn't stand how pampered she was, or how my dad doted on her like a textbook daughter-obsessed father. The family had clearly become wealthy again, yet it never once crossed his mind to invest in me. He tried to groom my brother, because he was the eldest son. Unfortunately, my brother had zero interest in inheriting the family business. He tried to groom my sister, because she was pretty. Unfortunately, she was a lump of useless clay, impossible to prop up no matter how hard you tried. So I was always stuck in this awkward, in-between position at home. On the surface, I almost seemed to have it good. I skipped school, got into fights, dated early, dyed my hair. No one ever bothered to scold me. But deep down, I was holding onto a single breath of resentment. Among the 3 siblings, my report card was the only one that truly shone. My thoughts drifted far, far away, until my brother's words pulled me back. He said, "So tell me, who did you inherit that sharp mind from?" "Our mom's a hopeless romantic. And Dad, don't even get me started. He's clearly the dumbest one in the family, yet insists on pretending he's clever." I turned around and leaned back against the balcony railing, my tone teasing and mocking. "Why are you picking on me? You're not much like Mom or Dad either." My brother nodded thoughtfully. After a long pause, he suddenly said, "Your eyes, they look a lot like Grandpa's." He called my name softly and made me look straight at him. Then he said, "The family business, by logic and by right, should belong to you. Don't carry any burden, just do your best." No one knew how much torment I'd endured while laying out the chessboard against my own family. Being seen through so suddenly, I nearly fled with my gaze. My pupils stirred with emotions I couldn't quite name or explain. I pretended the wind was too strong and had irritated my eyes, hurriedly changing the subject. "If neither you nor I are like our parents," I said, Then who in this family actually is like them? Before he could answer, we were interrupted. My sister and my mom's argument drifted over. We heard my sister shout at my mom. "He's stringing me along because he loves me. Why isn't he stringing you along?" My brother and I locked eyes. Then we burst out laughing, doubled over, unable to stop. Chapter 8. The moment I received the appointment letter, I asked myself whether I was happy. I had been plotting for nearly 5 years, almost from the first time I saw Willow. When I confirmed she really was nothing more than a naive, hopeless romantic, I'd already sketched out the framework of my plan. Taking control of my own family company was power. Joining Lou Group and securing a 7-figure annual salary was money. Marrying Willow Lou and gaining access to the Lou family social and business network was status and influence. Money, power, fame, connections. I truly had everything I wanted. But what about Willow? Back in college, her sincerity had been trampled on, and I'd been a witness to it. Looking back at the 3 years of marriage with Willow, I had to admit, I'd actually lived quite happily. Willow wasn't my ideal partner. She had no real opinions of her own, was easily swayed, listened either to her parents or to her best friends. Her personality was a little awkward too. She'd sulk at the smallest thing and expect others to guess what was wrong. But in our first year of marriage, because of business entertaining, I drank myself into chronic gastritis, so that pampered heiress who'd never lifted a finger in the kitchen rolled up her sleeves and learned to cook for me, trying again and again. Her arms blistered with large patches of burns. People like me are, frankly, ungrateful. It wasn't as if we didn't have housekeepers. What was the point of doing something so self-sacrificing just to move yourself emotionally? Not to mention that porridge, even a dog would shake its head at the smell. Watching Willow with tears pooling in her eyes from the pain, I couldn't stop mocking her in my head. Yet my hands, applying ointment to her burns, grew gentler and gentler. More than a year into the marriage, our relationship was still steady. Willow had also hinted more than once that she wanted a baby, but things didn't go as hoped. After multiple failed attempts, we went to the hospital, only to learn that Willow was infertile. I chose to shoulder the blame myself. Because of that, I endured no small number of cold looks from Father Lou and Mother Lou. The most humiliating incident was when Father Lou chewed me out for half an hour during a meeting over a minor mistake at work. But who was I? I actually wished they'd reacted more fiercely. Better yet, slapped me across the face in front of everyone. That way, my returns would be even greater. When Willow found out, she had a huge fight with her father. Afterward, her dad took the initiative to mend fences with me, promoted me, and gave me a raise. With a bitter smile, he said that a married daughter was like water poured out. I had to admit, when I heard him say that Willow had never once fought with her family growing up, and that he never expected she'd be willing to sever ties with them because of me, I did feel a brief flicker of emotion. On the drive back to the company, I still hadn't decided what kind of ending Willow and I should have. It wasn't that I'd fallen in love with her. No one falls in love with their own chess piece. From the moment I decided to use Willow as my entry point, that kind of relationship between us was never possible. But I was still human, and humans hesitate. Humans feel guilt. Truthfully, I didn't really care what Willow and Makoto were doing. Even if the two of them were wrapped up with other men and women every single day, as long as I wanted to, I could still calmly continue playing the role of the perfect husband. But I'd already gotten what I wanted. There was no need to keep living like this, so fake, for so long. Chapter 9. So in the end, I handed the decision back to Willow. You could say it was a tiny bit of compensation on my part. Back at the office, I leaned against my desk with a blank expression, smoking. At some point, rain began to fall. The sky darkened, thunder flashing faintly in the distance. For the first time in all these years, I was alone, and yet my mind held not a single calculation. Strangely calm. So calm it was completely still. By the floor-to-ceiling windows, I quietly admired the rain, until a familiar figure suddenly broke into my field of vision. At the door, a rapid series of electronic beeps sounded. As it opened, I saw Willow's face, soaked through with rain. She smiled at me and said, "Hubby, I brought you dinner. You must be starving, right?" This woman, who was terrified of thunder, was shivering from the cold herself. Yet all she cared about was whether I'd eaten. After driving back, Willow, her shoes completely soaked, weakly threw herself into my arms and asked me to carry her upstairs. If we were just dating, that might have been romantic, but we weren't. What I was planning had never really had anything to do with Willow as a person. Still, holding her like this, I craved her warmth more than ever before. My voice carried no pretense this time, just plain and direct. "What have you been doing lately? I never see you around." Willow paused. She walked inside, took off her shoes. When she spoke again, her excitement was impossible to hide. "It's over," she said. She buried her face in my neck. "Hubby, I'll stay with you all the time from now on. I used to wonder, did I marry you to get back at the guy who rejected me back then? Or was it just gratitude? Or did I actually fall for you?" But now I finally understand. She hooked her arms around my neck, eyes shining like a young girl's. She said, "Hubby, I love you so much, and I admire you too. You always manage to do so easily the things I can never do well. My parents were right. Being able to marry you is the greatest blessing of my life. Is that so?" I asked, forcing a smile as my face grew paler. Perhaps words weren't enough to express the love overflowing in her heart. She stood on her tiptoes, wanting to kiss me, just like on our wedding night. She looked up at me, lashes trembling, her eyes full of nervousness and joy. But at the very last second, just before our lips met, the doorbell rang. The tiny bit of hesitation I'd just released snapped back instantly, leaving nothing behind. Makoto had finally made his move, standing stubbornly in the wind and rain at my doorstep. He asked just one question. "Willow, when you said that if I asked you to marry me, you'd say yes, does that still count?" The Willow who'd just been lively like a happy kitten now looked as if she'd been soaked in bitter medicine. Even the corners of her mouth tasted sour. Her voice came out hoarse. "Hubby, please listen to my explanation. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to overthink. Makoto was recently diagnosed with depression. He's tried to jump off a building several times. I went today just to make things clear with him. Please don't think I'm dirty. Please don't abandon me. Okay?" By the end, her voice grew softer and softer, her sobs louder and louder. I didn't even know why my own eyes turned red. I hugged her again, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and said, "All right, cry anymore and you won't be pretty. Besides, I only got to marry you because I picked up what someone else left behind in the first place. Didn't you always want to marry him? I can't exactly stop you from running towards someone better, can I?" As I spoke, Willow shook her head over and over again, until Makoto, standing at the door, finally turned and walked away. Chapter 10. If we're talking about Willow's greatest strength, it's probably that she's kind to the point of being almost saintly. She stood up, looked at me, then looked toward the now empty corridor where Makoto was nowhere to be seen. I encouraged her one last time. "Go." She finally made up her mind and nodded. Then, "Hubby, I'll go check on him, just in case something really happens. Once the police arrive, I'll come back right away." I smiled at her. I said, "No need. Being able to marry you was already more than enough for me." Her steps paused abruptly after hearing that. She didn't understand why I would say something Southwest oddly out of place, but saving someone was more urgent, so she still left. That line was abrupt, because the moment Makoto appeared earlier, I suddenly realized that if I hadn't interfered back then, maybe those two would already be living happily together. After marrying Willow, I'd looked into Makoto's situation. Back then, he really was proud. He looked down on someone like Willow, a pampered rich girl raised in comfort. After all, he was a top student from University A, convinced he would build a great career of his own. After rejecting Willow, Makoto quickly got together with his poor junior. Unfortunately, he was terrible at judging people. After graduation, both his career and love life collapsed, and he took a massive fall because of that junior. He was different from me. He wasn't actually that profit-driven. When he looked for a girlfriend, he wanted a comrade, someone to struggle forward with together. As for me, I'd known since childhood that when you don't yet have the qualifications to possess good things, you should use the resources around you and turn trash into treasure. Truthfully, I didn't dislike Makoto. I even admired him a little. When I first heard that he'd put his girlfriend's name on the property deed before marriage and later got cheated out of $300,000 in bride price, I secretly cursed him as stupid as a pig. But thinking about it carefully, I probably had no right to say that. At least he dared to go all in, while I used my family, then used the people who loved me. What kind of decent person did that make me? I packed my bags and moved out of the home I shared with Willow, then had a lawyer draft a divorce agreement. At first, Willow came looking for me several times. All I could do was repeatedly mention her infidelity during the marriage, saying one thing while meaning another. Watching Willow suffer felt like dull knives cutting into my flesh. The only way I could cope was by numbing myself with work. 3 years, 5 years, I watched my company rise, until it stood even taller than the Liu family's landmark building. Standing in the CEO's office at the very top floor, I asked myself a question my brother had asked me many years ago. Are you happy, now that you've gotten what you wanted? Of course I am. These days, who doesn't call me President Wang when they see me? I have money and power. I no longer need to pick up what others have used and discarded. Even my nighttime indulgences, I drive luxury cars to loiter outside university gates, picking out fresh faces. And yet, occasionally, a woman's image would blur through my mind, her features unclear, flashing past too quickly to grasp. Once, at a banquet, I ran into Willow's father. There was no avoiding it. I'd imagined countless ways he might start the conversation, but to my surprise, he merely raised a glass to me and, like an old friend, casually mentioned that he actually had another illegitimate daughter. Very capable. 35 years old. Still single. A flicker of awkwardness crossed my face, then vanished amid the clinking glasses and polite laughter. I smiled and said, "No thanks. I don't have the heart for that anymore." After the toast, I slipped away to the back garden. The moon was perfectly round tonight. See, Willow, this is the adult world. Adults always put their own interests first. Who would ever be like you? So don't be foolish. Don't wait for me.